Let's get an RV, he says. It'll be fun, he says. And for the most part, it was. But we have learned 5 really good lessons in our first 6 months of RVing with our camper.
Living and learning. It is now early spring as we make this video for you, the onset of what most people refer to as camping season. And it kind of got us to thinking how we've been RV owners for 6 months and a bit of change now. And we probably, in hindsight, bought our RV at exactly the wrong time. We bought our RV tail end of August, beginning of September, late summer. So at the end of camping season, and while our first trip was in lovely, warm, late summer weather, every trip since then has been in some kind of cold, rainy, nasty, inclement, not optimal for camping weather. So, but the upside of that is probably that we've learned a lot about how to not set up for proper weather camping, how to deal with bad weather. So we now have good weather camping to look forward to. But we're going to tell you about 5 things that we've learned so far about bad weather camping. And the first of that is probably got to be propane management. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. When we went on our first trip, as he said, it was beautiful. The weather was warm. We were able to go swimming in the lake. So we didn't really have to worry about a heat issue. And in the South, you wouldn't think that'd be a big problem anyway. But in late October, on our second trip to Paris Mountain, we had to turn on our furnace for the first time, and we experienced that smell. And but we also experienced a couple of other things that came from using our propane furnace heater.
Yeah, we of course had no idea about how fast propane went, and we did not run out of propane that trip. But that led us to looking for some kind of solution to conserve propane and still keep the interior of the camper heated. And we found a nice little, or actually she found, a nice little electric space heater. And with how small the interior of the Falcon is, it worked wonderfully. And that has been a game changer. We have only had to change 1 propane tank this whole winter season. Now, again, that's only 5 trips. I know some of you full-timers are snickering at us, but we've definitely conserved our propane a good bit by having that electric space heater.
I actually located it on Amazon after searching for a space heater for campers, trying to find something that would be safe. We have had a lot of success with it. We actually used it during the day without the propane heat, and we were able to conserve a lot of propane that way, and it worked great.
Lesson number 2, stemming from the use of propane inside a small enclosed space, is the lesson of condensation. We had no clue about condensation.
No.
That was a surprise that weekend up in Greenville. Condensation, of course, is a bad thing. Moisture in any RV is a bad thing. It can lead to mold, rot, having to repair said damage. So once we realized what was happening and learned about the dangers of it, we had to figure out some kind of way to stem the tide of it. So that led us to learn about dehumidifiers. We found a small dehumidifier, again, she found a small dehumidifier ideal for smaller spaces. And I think that in conjunction with things like damp rid have kept it down to it. We only have, I think our trip to Aiken State Park, we had some condensation. But we've kind of kept it at bay for the most part with the help of those 2 things. So
that and leaving a window cracked. We have been leaving at least 1 window cracked, if not a couple. Especially when we wake up in the morning, we open several of them to try to get any extra condensation out to keep things as normal as possible.
Ventilation while you're showering, also important,
yes.
Again, because that and cooking probably is what generates the most moisture inside the camper. So venting while doing those activities it helps stem the tide a good bit.
Right.
Condensation, water, leads us to lesson 3. We learned very quickly during the good weather trip how quickly one fills up one's gray tank. That just amazed us how quickly we generated enough well, wastewater, not icky water, but sink
Not
water,
black water,
sink
gray
water, shower water, to fill up that gray tank. So before the second trip, it occurred to me that we could do things like not run as much water down the sink. She came up with or found suggestions about scraping dishes instead of necessarily washing them.
Right, scraping, especially pans that you have cooked something in a skillet, that you can scrape with a food scraper or a paper towel, so that you can just throw that in the trash rather than trying to get all the grease and ick off of the pan while it's sitting and soaking. You can kind of get it all out while it's still a little bit warm and save on some of your water.
And not to mention that grease is probably not real good for the inside of your gray tank anyway. And using your exterior shower to wash your dishes. Of course, if you don't have nasty food coated dishes, then you can wash your dishes outdoors, and whatever little bit of wastewater you generate in a pan or something, put in your fire pit, and that saves a lot of intake in your gray tank. And wastewater related, still not icky water, but
gray water.
Leads us to lesson number 4. Lesson, I guess, discovery might be a better term, but still, after that trip, I got to thinking about things we could do to help conserve intake into the gray water tank. And it occurred to me that I have a tool here at the house that I bet you have one, and a lot of people are already using said tool, that is just perfect for this particular problem, and it is called a 5-gallon bucket. It occurred to me that things like, and this is where it helps the most, when we first crank up the shower at our campsite for the first time, and the cold water that is in the line before the hot water trickles through, all that cold water, you're not going to bathe in it, it's going down the drain, going in your gray tank. Fill the bucket with the cold water. And then once the hot water comes in, you take the cold water in the bucket, set it aside, finish your shower. The next person out of the camper takes the bucket and dumps in the fire pit. I mean, it's clean water, dump it in the fire pit, dump it in the woods, but it saves the intake into the gray tank. And we've actually found some other uses for that 5-gallon bucket too, have we not?
We have. My favorite use is if I'm not actually using the shower in the camper, but using the shower in the bathhouse. You can actually use it to carry all your bath supplies, and you can actually, if you're a female, use it as a seat to sit on while you shave your legs, because I don't know about any other women out there using a camper shower, but it's not the most convenient for trying to shave your legs standing up.
It's not our size.
And using a Navy shower. It was a lifesaver, and I'm very happy we have found this tool.
The bucket has also been a help in our breakdown process. We've only had full hookups at one site, one trip. So before we depart and we visit the dump station, since we know our camper is going back into, in effect, storage for several weeks before we use it again, we always treat the black tank before we stow it away. And part of that process is, after dumping, we put 3 to 5 gallons of fresh water back in the black tank, and then add a sterilizing pod to try to keep things from cooking while it's in storage. And that bucket has been a big help. There's no guarantee you're going to have an available water supply at a dump station. Fortunately, all of ours so far have, but it's not a guarantee. So having that bucket at hand, you can run the bucket back to a campsite and snag a few gallons of water and lug it back to your camper if you have to. Fortunately, that hasn't happened yet.
Right. We've been very fortunate, especially since that's my job.
And sticking to the water theme brings us to lesson number 5. In cold weather, especially in freezing weather, that water supply can freeze up. Fortunately, that has not happened to us totally yet. We were afraid it would during our Asheville trip. The North Carolina mountains at the end of December, you'd think you'd have to worry about freezing weather.
Right.
Of course, we didn't. Nothing works out like we think it will. But our next trip to Aiken, we did have some freezing temperatures, and we did not disconnect water because we did not think it was going to get terribly far below freezing, and it did not. But one night that we were there, we actually did have a little bit of an ice plug develop in our water supply, so we were without water for a few hours until that plug melted. We have learned that it is important too, if you think you're approaching 32 degrees Fahrenheit, disconnect your water and leave a little drip going at your spigot overnight to try to keep that spigot from freezing solid, so first thing in the morning you can reconnect and have a water supply again. Again, that's probably not a thing you'll have to worry about in warm weather, but as we get back to next fall, next winter, we will definitely have that in mind.
Exactly.
So in 6 months of RV living and learning, that's just 5 things that we've learned so far. We know there are more. Tell us yours, educate us some. We want to live and learn through you, just as hopefully you're living and learning through us. Tell us down below some things we may have missed, some things we may have gotten away with that we're doing wrong. Help us out.
Yes, please leave us some comments. I'm still learning. We were not camper, RV campers in the past, so this is completely new to us, and we are learning as we go along. So please share some ideas with us.
Subscribe. Keep checking back here for more. Hit that notification bell. We do these every week or two. Hope to see you back soon. Keep living and learning.